Welcome to Forensic Friday,
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all.
Okay, take 7.
it's fine.
Nat and I just started this case and then realized, yeah, I have some of the things, not all of the things, and Nat also prepped like half of this one.
Yeah,
So we're gonna tag team this sucker.
we didn't communicate the case that we were
No.
that we were going to do, and we both went in on the same one.
We are holding on by a thread. We have conference next week.
Literally. I still need to know what slides I'm doing.
Oh, I know. We're gonna at least the PowerPoint's done this year. Last year we were working on it the night before, even still.
Okay.
Forward. There's a lot happening.
We're doing the best we can with what we got, people.
Do it the best we can. Okay, so Nat's going to help me with this, but listeners, here's what I want you to do. Imagine this. You're driving home. Maybe you're driving home from work, or maybe you're on your way to see your family. The sun is setting. You go under a bunch of overpasses. You're driving on roads that you've driven a million times. And all of a sudden, there's a big boom, like a concussive impact. Your windshield explodes inward, glass sprays everywhere. You're disoriented, terrified. You're maybe trying to pull over, trying to stop your car. You have no idea what just happened. This was a reality for some drivers in Colorado a couple of years ago.
Yep.
So we're going to get into this case and what the ultimate result was.
Yep.
This happened in 2023, right, Nat? Spring of 2023 in Jefferson County, Colorado. And Nat is really familiar with Jefferson County. I worked in Jefferson County for a long time too. But you've literally driven on the road of the case that we're covering tonight.
Yes, numerous times.
Numerous times. One of the things we were debating is, did this happen under an overpass? Was it just in the middle of the road? And Nat was like, I've driven on that. There's not an overpass on that road.
No.
Essentially, the case we're doing tonight is the case of several juveniles who got together, and what kind of started as a prank game, whatever, turned into a really deadly string of behaviors in a couple of evenings, one in particular, in which they were throwing rocks at cars. And there were several people who had broken windshields, broken windows, that kind of stuff. But unfortunately for one woman, 20-year-old Alexa Bartell, this proved fatal. They threw an almost 10-pound rock, 10-pound rock, landscaping rock, out of their truck or the side of the road or somewhere. And Nat thinks it was out of their truck.
Yeah, I think it was out of the bed of their truck.
And you can look it up online. I mean, it just punched a hole in the driver's side windshield, and they believe that she was basically dead on impact.
Yeah, I think she was killed instantly.
And the thing that I remember when I was younger, I was driving with a friend of mine on I-25, and a chunk of ice came off of a semi in front of us. And it's still one of the scariest things that ever happened. It embedded itself in the windshield.
Oh my gosh.
See the ice, like it was in between us in the windshield, and it stuck probably 4 inches, 5 inches into the car.
Oh, that's wild.
I know, it was absolutely terrifying. I mean, he had to get the windshield replaced and everything. It didn't actually shatter the windshield though.
Yeah.
I mean, there
No,
were cracks.
there has to be some force.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, I have that frame of reference, and I'm like, granted, we were driving, 75, 80 miles an hour on I-25, but the force of the thing that hit his car was much smaller than 10 pounds, and it embedded itself. So I can see how this happened, you know? So, Nat, you know a little more about the woman who was killed, Alexa. What do you know about her?
Well, she was a young adult or like late teen young adult in the Arvada community. I believe she had just graduated high school, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it said she was 20 when she died, so she very well could have graduated.
Oh, so no, she was in college, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But she was on the phone with her closest friend.
Oh, well,
I
now
don't
I'm unwell.
I know. So yeah, so she was on the phone with one of her closest friends and they heard her just go silent. And then they had I believe she had her location and went and like found the car or like told law enforcement where to find her.
Mm,
Yeah, pretty nuts.
that is so scary.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
scary.
Scary to be on the phone too and like to not know what happened and
You know, you and I talk so much on the phone, and when I think about when we drop each other, which happens, my service sucks. I don't know who you have, but
I have AT&T, they suck.
me too. AT&T, get it together.
I think we're gonna switch.
Are they T-Mobile now? I think they're T-Mobile.
No, they're not.
Who do I have? I have T-Mobile. I don't have AT&T.
Oh, you have T-Mobile? I was
I
gonna
have
switch to
Sprint.
T-Mobile.
Now I have T-Mobile. It's not the best. Here's the thing. Verizon's the best, but they're also the most expensive by a
Yeah.
bit. So
Yeah.
I just need to decide how much this annoys me. You
Well,
know?
AT&T is expensive too.
Ugh. Well, I've got to figure this out. So anyway, that same night, the same night that Alexa was hit by this rock in her car and she died, it was a fatal impact. At least 6 other vehicles were struck by rocks. Not all of the victims' names have been widely publicized. Their experiences were just as terrifying, though. Some had injuries. I don't think anybody actually had life-threatening injuries, but some of them had cuts from the flying glass. Some had really significant property damage, like their vehicles. They couldn't operate their vehicles anymore. And also, when I think about just the trauma of something like this and then trying to drive, like, have you ever been in an accident and it's really hard to drive for a little while? Like, you can hear, for me, it's the sound. I've been in a couple, and it's like the sound of the accident just kind of would stick with me.
Oh yeah, I've been in a few accidents.
Oh, I know you have. I know you have. But it kind of sticks with you, the imagery, the all of it. One of the things that stuck with me after my last accident, first of all, did you know people with ADHD are more likely to be in car accidents? Just FYI.
Oh,
Um, which is interesting. But the smell of the airbag, it smells almost like burning.
huh.
Have you ever
Yeah.
had an airbag go off?
Yeah, I haven't noticed the smell though.
Oh, it was weird. And I think it's because I had to sit there for a bit. I think I really just got all the smell, right? All the smell out of it. So those drivers had this really scary stuff happen even just minutes before she died. And they did it in a couple places in that area too. It wasn't all just at this one road. They did it
Right.
in a couple of places, but all in a similar area.
Yeah.
They were actively, these kids were actively targeting vehicles, and it was escalating that evening. But now, do you remember, had they done it on other nights as well? I don't think this was the only night.
I don't remember, to be honest.
Yeah,
I don't know if I ever knew that.
I feel like they had some escalation happening, and I may get to it. The community is pissed, right? Because initially, when this happens, they knew pretty quickly that this was obviously a nefarious thing. Somebody threw a rock, somebody did something, and they have no idea who did it. So the search starts, and they kind of had a little bit of a tip in terms of the truck.
Yes.
They sort of knew what these kids were driving,
Yeah.
right? Law enforcement, which would be the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, but also the FBI got involved. They kind of put all their resources together and they started to sort of connect it to previous rock throwing incidents. So this had happened before. They looked at surveillance footage, they interviewed witnesses, they processed the evidence at the scene, They really kind of looked through everything, including the digital footprint left by the perpetrators, meaning they were looking at cell phone tower data to see who was where, when,
Yeah.
social media, all of it, right? So ultimately, they find 4 young men who were involved. Their names are Joseph Koenig, Nicholas Carroll Chick, Zachary Kwok, and Noah Sprague. They were all teenagers when this happened. This is terrifying, especially as a mom of a teenager or the mom of a boy. Now, Mac could never. His little empathy self is so adorable. But they were all teenagers when this happened, between 17 and 19 years old. The more law enforcement questioned them, the scarier this whole thing got, because it wasn't a random act of violence. It meaning like one person decides to do this. These were friends hanging out together in a car, and this was like a really weird form of thrill seeking. And they were terrorizing people. Okay, so here's a question that I want you to sort of give me your hot take on. Why is it so often young men who are involved in violent thrill-seeking offenses? We don't hear about women and girls doing this very often, and if they do, they're typically with the man in their life. They don't like get you don't see a gaggle of girls go do this stuff typically. Throw a landscaping rock at a car very often,
Right. Right.
right?
Well, I think there's a few thoughts that I have. One, I think it's just biologically true that men's brain develops slower than women's. And so the impulsivity is higher for boys than girls.
Yes. Like on a
And
brain chemistry level.
yes, just on a brain chemistry level. So I think that's definitely part of it. I think there's a social aspect of it where, you know, even if one kid thinks it's a bad idea, they're not going to speak up. There's some competitiveness, I think, a little bit. I mean, women are competitive, but,
Mm-hmm.
and then also psychopathy tends to run higher in men.
Mm-hmm.
And we might be dealing with some of that in this case.
Oh, absolutely. Statistic wise, from the data from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, there's a significant disparity, which we were talking about, but when you actually put numbers to it, it's wild. 70% or more of juvenile crimes, juvenile arrests in the US are males,
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
like dramatically higher.
Yeah.
In 2020, they did kind of an update on it. 80% of youth arrests for violent crimes, male. Murder arrest, 92% male. So there's a couple of factors going on. I agree with everything that you said. So, from a sociological perspective, traditional gender roles play a role in this, right? Boys are supposed to be tough, suppress emotions, move faster, make decisions quicker, climb things. Even Mac, and Mac's kind of a cautious kiddo. He's an oldest only.
Yeah.
He still, man, as a baby, like he just loved to climb things. He was
Yeah.
always wanting to get up on stuff and, always moving. Always, he used to put Garrett's shoes on and just like run up and down the hall.
Oh my gosh.
And they run everywhere, everywhere. Mac ran everywhere. And I remember seeing my friends with little girls, and they just didn't. It doesn't mean girls don't move, but there's like a different intensity to it. Everything was a little more intense, a little faster, a little, you know,
Right.
a little bit wilder. And some of that is peer influence. Some of that, though, we see it even in toddlers. It's just kind of innate. You cited impulsivity, which is a big part.
Mm-hmm.
Aggression is more prevalent in boys than girls.
Yeah.
ADHD and conduct disorder, which we're gonna circle back to that when we talk more about the boys.
Yeah.
I'm living proof that ADHD is masked in girls.
Yeah.
I think you are too.
No.
We were able to be pretty successful because maybe we complied with the rules a little bit more in school or whatever,
Mhm.
those kids sometimes move on to conduct disorders. So when you have a boy, they're more likely to go from ADHD, they get labeled in school, maybe they're a little problematic in their behavior. Some of those kids will then become oppositional defiant conduct disorder kids. And I want to be sensitive here too that trauma is a piece of this too. So sometimes kids are having trauma at home. They get labeled ADHD because they can't sit still when really their body's trying to work out all the trauma that's been going on. And then they
Yeah.
can progress into conduct disorder as well. So there's a couple key things that I want to highlight about these boys. And yes, they were 18, 17, 18, but they were still very much boys. One of the things that Joseph Koenig's attorney said, his defense team, said was that he actually had borderline personality disorder.
Interesting.
He's the one who threw the rock.
I'm not surprised.
Mhm. In my research, they made this big, point about how if he had borderline personality disorder, that's a psychological vulnerability, might have contributed to his behavior. He's the one who initiated the quote unquote game of throwing rocks. And he's the one who like whooped, like made noise and cheered after he hit the car. So there's like a disturbing level of thrill in
Yeah.
this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
What's problematic about a borderline personality disorder diagnosis in an 18-year-old boy?
A lot. There's a lot wrong with it.
Tell the people, Nat, what's wrong with it?
Well, the instability of emotions, right? Um, I'm not saying all individuals who are diagnosed with borderline are also potentially on the psychopathy spectrum, but I believe he is.
Yes.
And so the combination of borderline, so emotions going haywire, and then potentially also being on the psychopathy spectrum or continuum,
hmm
it's just a bad combination.
Well, yeah, I don't think he had borderline.
Yeah, it doesn't. Truthfully, I'm sitting here. I'm like, everyone I know with borderline doesn't throw rocks at cars.
Well, that, but also he's 18. We don't diagnose borderline in an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And
Who
I,
diagnosed him?
yes, well, that's what they were arguing.
Who diagnosed him though? Who'd they
I
say
do
diagnosed
not
him?
know. It says defense team. So my guess is they probably had a hired gun. I could dig deeper, but whatever.
Sure.
My guess is they had a hired gun psychologist who did an evaluation and said he had features of borderline personality disorder.
I'm sure he has features of it.
Sure, I think we all can have features of all kinds of things, particularly
Right, no
if you're
joke.
paid an exorbitant amount of money to think that.
Mm-hmm.
But when I really, really look at it, we don't diagnose personality disorders in 18-year-olds, period, full stop. Their brain's not done cooking. And a personality disorder requires a pattern of behavior for a long enough period of time that you're not there yet at 18. And particularly in a boy, I mean, on the one hand, there is a gender gap in diagnosis where we tend to diagnose boys with antisocial, narcissistic, and women, girls with borderline, histrionic, all those things. But in this particular case, he's too young to even have this considered. Now, the psychopathy elements can be present very, very young, and it's kind of a type of personality disorder. I think in the next DSM, it's going to be a personality disorder. I think that's where the
Yeah.
research is going, but we're not there yet. With psychopathy, though, that judgment could be made significantly younger. You'd have to be very careful, but those behaviors
Yeah.
are typically a little bit more crystallized younger, and you see them throughout childhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas a personality disorder gets rip roaring in late teenager to early adulthood and then persists,
Mm-hmm.
right? Other folks in the car. So we've got, just to review, Joseph Koenig, who I don't think has borderline personality disorder, allegedly. Um, And then the next up is Nicholas Carroll Chick, also 18. He owned the pickup. He was described by Koenig as being like a brother to him. So when they were first interrogated, one of the reports that I read said that he initially tried to shift blame, but then changed his story. So in the beginning, he was trying to not throw Koenig under the bus,
Okay.
but ultimately he did confirm
That Koenig threw the rock. Yeah.
that he was the one who threw the rock that killed Bartel. Now, Nicholas Karolchik admitted to feeling, quote, a hint of guilt when he passed by the car after the impact. So there's a little bit of remorse there, and it's a little bit of a different internal experience than Koenig's alleged excitement. He also told investigators that they'd thrown around 10 rocks that night.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's quite a few people who got hit.
Yep. Zachary Kwok was another one of this foursome, also 18, newest to the group of friends. He was the first to cooperate with investigators, and he was kind of the turning point in the case. His willingness to talk may suggest that he was a little bit less involved, whereas Nicholas Karolchik said everybody was throwing rocks that night. And everyone was throwing rocks around the time that Alexa Bartel died. Zachary Kwok said he didn't throw any rocks that night.
What was he doing?
He was there. He was involved in the sense that I don't know that he was picking them up and putting them in the truck or whatever, but he didn't throw any rocks at cars that night. He did admit and pled guilty to assault charges for rocks thrown earlier.
Okay.
So one of the points that I saw in a couple of different articles was the varying degrees of participation may have shown that there might have been a little bit of conflict even in the group. And that's not uncommon when you have a group of 3 or 4 boys. You may have 1 or 2 that are gung ho, and then one that's kind of like, and somebody who's just along for the ride. Like you can kind of see a little bit of difference even among the group. The other thing with boys is if a couple of them are more aggressive than the others, sometimes, and they would never say this, but sometimes they're a little bit too afraid to speak up.
Yeah, well, that's that competitive thing I was saying earlier.
But they might even be literally scared too, because that was one of the things that happened with Dylan and Eric. There was a fear factor there for sure. And there's an element of psychopathy in this whole thing. And I think those boys, if you saw your friend do this and get excited about it, that would have an impact on you. You might not want to cross them. The fourth kiddo, Noah Sprague, was the youngest. We don't know quite as much about him. We don't know a ton about any of them. I don't know if you found a bunch of background. We don't know a ton about any of them. But him being the youngest, there certainly could have been peer dynamics going on, being influenced by the group. It's highly unlikely the youngest is going to stand up and stop something happening. I get the sense that they'd been playing around with this whole thing and it really escalated that night too. More rocks, more aggressive.
Well, they might have because it sounds like they did it other days.
Yeah.
Prior to this. And so, it sounds like it got to maybe they were even throwing bigger rocks than they were before.
Well, and one of the things I was talking to a guy the other day and he talked about the show Jackass. Remember the show Jackass?
Yeah.
Some of y'all are too old for Jackass. Some of y'all are too young for Jackass. So hang in there with us, right?
Yeah.
But most millennials know about Jackass.
Yes.
Right? Jackass was a show where they would do these stunt videos and all this crazy stuff. And it would always say at the end of the episode, and I always thought that was funny, they'd have the skull and crossbones and be like, we don't review any submissions, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that people didn't record things and send them to MTV thinking they were going to become famous.
Right.
But it still had that exact effect.
Right. Exactly.
So there's a whole generation of boys, and boys have done this since the beginning of time, but there is a generation of boys who literally had role models who got famous for just doing dumb stuff.
Right.
And I was talking to a guy the other day who had a bunch of head injuries from this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And it was like, yeah, we did the whole, and I was like, jackass. And he's like, it's just a thing.
I know. It's all millennial boys did it.
Yes, they really
My
did.
brother did stupid stuff from Jackass. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And it was also kind of when some of the social media stuff was going more mainstream. And so you saw more of that. So the reason that this is kind of discouraging, but also like food for thought, when we talk about juvenile offenders, and I've done quite a bit of work with juvenile offenders. I don't know, have you done a lot of work with juvenile offenders?
Some work, yeah.
Some work with juvenile offenders. My beginning of my career was some of it was with juvenile sex offenders, also juvenile offenders with drug charges, gang
Yeah.
involvement, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I did a little more of that.
I've done more of the substance abuse stuff.
Yeah, as high as 76% of juvenile offenders are rearrested within 2 years.
Wow.
I know. So that feels sad to me and kind of stressful and overwhelming. But there is still evidence that early intervention can be very helpful. Now, if somebody has a psychopathic bend, which I think the first dude, I don't know enough to say anything really clinically about it,
Mm-hmm.
that there was a very callous approach to that situation
Mm.
by at least one of the boys, right?
Right.
They didn't care and they knew that that rock hit this woman. They didn't know she was dead, but they knew it hit her directly. And
Yeah.
at least one of them was cheering. So
Wow.
there's that.
Yeah.
But when we intervene in a helpful way, there is some hope that we can reduce the risk of recidivism. And that's the work you and I do all the time with adults and adolescents, really, at
Yeah.
this point. We've talked before evidence-based programs, which would be maybe CBT, DBT, that kind of stuff, family-focused interventions. I know our girlfriend Megan wants to start a multi-family group
Yeah.
for adolescents. I think that's such a cool idea.
Yeah.
I've never run one, but I've heard about them. I think they're cool. One really cool thing that I read though is mentoring programs can reduce antisocial behavior in juveniles by 30%. So big brothers, big sisters, just kind of that pro-social environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we create that in our groups and it makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about housing a juvenile offender, it costs $88,000 a year.
Hmm.
And the things too that I've seen, because where I worked in the beginning of my career, I never worked in the inpatient facility, but they were trying to build, they had one and they were building another inpatient facility for juveniles, juvenile boys specifically. And one of the arguments was this is like the safest place for them.
Mm-hmm.
The other argument that now I know is actually probably true, but I didn't know then because the research has caught up. If you put them all in a facility together, very rarely does that make them better.
Hmm.
They do sometimes need to not be at home, particularly if they're terrorizing their family or hurting their family. But
Mm-hmm.
when we just lock up young men together, we create an awful lot of trauma and we don't necessarily reduce the risk of recidivism. We might even increase it
Right.
in some ways. How many clients have you worked with who have trauma from that kind of stuff? Foster
From
care, group
oh,
homes,
quite
juvenile
a few.
detention facilities.
Yeah, quite a few.
Oh, I also wanted to mention that when kids have conduct disorder, a lot of times people think they're for sure going to become antisocial. Like that's just the trajectory and you can't do anything about it. That's not true. First of all, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people don't. In most even
Mm-hmm.
don't go from conduct disorder to antisocial personality disorder. They estimate, and this is based on one study, I think I think I could find a lot of statistics, but one study that I saw was 25 to 40% from conduct disorder or youths with conduct disorder go on to develop antisocial personality disorder. So most of them actually don't. And even for those who do, antisocial personality disorder doesn't always run the course of your whole life. A lot of
Right.
times it goes down with age, and some people kind of grow out of that lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Nat, if we have listeners who are at home and they're going, you know what, my kid is really starting to run with the wrong crowd,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe their behavior's really taken a turn and I don't recognize the way they're behaving anymore. Maybe they're being more disrespectful to me.
Mm-hmm.
What can they do, Nat? Like what's a parent to do?
I think, well, the things that you read off earlier are some things to look into,
Hmm.
right? So sometimes kids just go against their parents, and the parents could be doing everything they can to
Hmm.
figure it out, but maybe getting them a mentor or getting them involved in an activity will that presents that type of thing, like a good coach, or just getting them involved in stuff. And also ask your kids what's going on.
Oh, for sure.
If you approach them in a way of, what the heck are you doing? Why are you acting like this? They're not going to respond well. But if you genuinely ask them, hey, I really care about you, and I'm confused.
Oh yeah.
They might not respond well, but that's coming from a more caring place, and they might respond later.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, my experience raising a child is singular and he's 9.
Yeah.
But I've seen even in the past year or two, not even a year or two, probably in the past 6 months to a year, just he's just growing up and he's having his own ideas and he's sometimes kind of not, I wouldn't even say pushing boundaries. He's just the best kid in the world, which by the way, I don't take credit for beyond the fact that I'm fairly consistent with him. He's just a good kid. But I see even then, right? There's moments where it's like, oh, mom, or
Hmm.
oh, I just don't want to do this, or I'm not, or whatever, or selective listening, or whatever. You're
Yeah.
gonna go through this with your kids to a degree.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, treatment obviously, but what are some things, Nat, that people can do when their kids are maybe in max age range, even like 9 to 12, before they're running around with their friends that might help keep them on a path that's healthier?
Well, you're going to know better than me because I'm just starting this journey.
I know, but you have such good ideas always.
But I think, again, I think being really present and talking to them like they're a human, like a little human.
Yeah,
Right? I see you do this with Mac, where you just talk to him. You
I
don't treat
do.
him like a baby. You don't treat him like he's too old, right?
Mm-mm.
You just treat him like a little human. And I think that can be really helpful. And immediacy, right? Setting boundaries immediately, and
Mm.
not being a dictator, but someone who's like, hey, that's just not how we're gonna do this.
I do
Right?
that. You do that too.
I do. Yeah, I do it with adults most of the time.
Yeah, but it's been really fun, Nat, watching you. I was telling my mom this the other day. Hi, Tina. I was telling my mom, Nat is talking to Gray the way that I would talk to Mac. I talk to Mac all day long. My
Mm-hmm.
mom talked to me.
Mm-hmm.
We still talk a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There is something really cool about talking to a kid. Like they have an opinion, a voice, a feeling. They need that real bad.
Yeah.
And we don't always do that. And so one of the things that makes me laugh when you're with Grace, sometimes she'll be like, girl, we got to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
I love everything about that messaging. I love that you said immediacy, which is something we've talked about before, just naming something in the moment,
Yeah.
right? I can't remember if I told our listeners or just you about when he had a 2-second attitude in the car when we were on our road trip. And I was like, I think you forgot who you're talking to.
Oh, yes, you did.
And then we both just started laughing because I don't need to discipline him in that moment. He was not trying to be disrespectful. He was just feeling himself for a minute.
Right.
It's okay to just say, like, whoa, that was different. Like,
That
that's
was
okay.
that was out of left field.
Yes, totally.
Mhm.
And then he didn't even get in trouble. It was just me and him acknowledging like, "Ooh, that was different." I don't know that I love that, but that was different.
That's not how this is gonna go.
What I didn't say was, you got to respect your mom. Like I didn't like lose it, right? It was just sort of like, oh, hey, that was different. Let's maybe
Yeah.
not do that. I don't know
Yeah.
how I feel about that. Real quick, kind of to wrap this up, I want to talk a little bit about what ended up happening with these four young men.
Yes.
They faced really intense charges. The court process was really emotional, as you would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
The community was really, really upset, which is
Mm-hmm.
understandable, but just this is so senseless. It's not, they weren't even like upset with each other at school. This was completely random, completely senseless.
Right.
So, Joseph Koenig, who was identified as the one who threw the rock that killed Alexa Bartel, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 60 years. He was convicted of 19 charges, including first-degree murder. So he's not getting out.
Good.
So that 18-year-old kid, that 18-year-old boy who threw
Mm-hmm.
is never, ever, ever going to be free again. Which,
Mm-hmm.
good, yes. I mean, I think he's dangerous.
Yeah.
What a tragedy all the way around.
Yeah.
You got
Yeah.
a dead
Oh.
20
Oh
year
yeah. His life is wasted.
His life is wasted. His life is wasted. He's just going to be, and we as taxpayers and society get to pay for that as well.
Yeah.
Nicholas Carroll Chick was sentenced to 45 years in prison, followed by 8 years of mandatory parole as part of a plea deal for his role in the incident.
Okay.
He was considered complicit in Alexa Bartel's death. He pled guilty to second-degree murder and attempted murder.
Wow. And how long is his prison sentence?
45 years and then 8 years of parole. So that's 53 years. And he was 18 years old when it happened. Oh, this is not going to be great math for me. Oh, 18 plus 53. Carry the one. 71?
Sure.
That sounds right.
That's wild.
Yeah, he'll be in his 70s when he gets out. Or
Yeah.
well, he'll be in his 70s when he's done with parole.
Right.
So if he lives long enough, he
Like
might.
60s when he's out of prison.
Yep. Isn't that wild? And who will he be then?
Right.
You take an 18-year-old and put him in prison for 45 years?
Right.
Zachary Quack was sentenced to 27 years for first-degree assault related to Bartel's death, plus 5 years for a second-degree assault charge in the series of attacks, for a total of 32 years in the Department of Corrections.
Mm.
That was a plea deal. The best deal he could get was 32 years.
Wow. And that's the guy who didn't throw anything?
And no, that's the guy who threw rocks in other situations throughout the day, but not at Bartel,
Okay.
right? 32 years. So he was 18.
Mm.
So 50.
Mm-hmm.
I get out at like 50. And then Noah Sprague, the juvenile. So 17. This is where this gets weird. Difference of a year.
Mm-hmm.
For so many of these kids when
Yeah.
they get in trouble, the difference of a year. He got a 7-year sentence in juvenile detention followed by probation.
How many years?
7-year sentence in juvenile detention
Okay.
followed by probation.
And then he's done.
And then he's done.
Just because he's a juvenile? That's insane.
1 year difference. So if you think, not even a year.
Sorry, I said the word insane, but that is.
Well, think about like, you know how some of the kids in a grade year,
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, Max got a fall birthday, some kids have a spring birthday. It could literally be that spread
Mm-hmm.
that could make the difference.
It's wild.
And this really matters too, I think, when you have an older kid who's hanging out with younger kids, if they're getting into bad stuff. sometimes the older kids get charges related to what the younger kids do too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know that that happened in this case. I didn't see specific charges that way, but I know that's true for alcohol
Yeah.
and, some of those things. Alcohol and drugs, you can end up getting charged for distributing to the minor who's your friend who was sitting by you at the movie theater before you were drinking in the car.
Right.
Like weird stuff,
Yeah.
right? I think it's maybe a good place to end tonight just talking about the importance of all of the choices that we make, particularly when we're young.
Mm-hmm.
But even as a grown up, we talk about how contagious behavior is. And
Mm-hmm.
so hanging out with people who live and behave in a way that you want to or you want your children to, that's who you want to spend your time with.
Yeah.
I want Matt. So Matt came to work with me today.
Oh, fun.
He saw the ants, right? Aunt Nat. He was very disappointed to not see you, I will say. He saw Aunt Lisa. He saw Aunt Lori. He'll have lunch with Davina when he comes to the office. He was hanging out with all his favorite people. He'll literally go door to door, find a
Mm-hmm.
playmate. But I was thinking about what a gift all of you are to my son that he gets to see these wonderful, healthy people and parents
Yeah.
in our lives because I'm
Yeah.
not his only role model. He's got a lot of role models.
Mm-hmm.
Gray has 1 million people who love her. Lots of
Yeah.
wonderful people love baby Gray.
Yeah.
And she's going to have all of them, not just you in her life. And you're
Yeah.
you're enough, but she's going to have a cherry on top with all these other people. So, if you're a parent, look around, see who's around your kiddos and know that that's really writing something on them
Mm-hmm.
in great ways and in hard ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good way to leave our audience, you know,
Yeah, and be safe out there, that too.
urging. Oh, for sure. I was gonna say, I don't know if it was a raw or if it was someone threw it. But I was driving one time. I was driving my dad's Suburban, it was a new one, and I swear no one was in front of me. No
Mm.
one was on the side of me, and not a massive rock, but like a rock like that big hit the windshield and cracked the crap out of it. I mean, massive chip in the windshield. And I was like, I think someone threw a rock from another car.
Oh no. How
It's
long ago?
so you have to be careful. Not that long ago, I was pregnant.
I did. Okay, one thing I did do, this was a year and a half ago, maybe. My mom and I drove cross country to go see my grandma, and I accidentally brake checked a semi on the highway. In fairness, he was riding my ass, and I didn't really realize it. And we were going to get off to get gas, and I was, whatever, probably listening to podcasts, talking to my mom. I look in the rearview mirror, and he is on me. Like, I mean, I could practically see his nose hairs. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
up on my car.
yeah.
And it freaked me out. And I like brake checked on accident, sort of.
Okay.
And it made this guy so mad. Now, I was driving above the speed limit. There was no reason for this to be happening. He gets ahead of me. I get to the right. I let him pass me because I'm not about to have a fight with a semi, right?
Right.
He gets ahead of me. He throws a thing of Gatorade out of his truck and hits
Wow.
my car on the freeway.
Wow.
And then we got off at the same exit. hmm We went to the same gas station. And I'm like, I'm gonna go say hi, My
Oh
mom,
God.
don't go talk to him, whatever. And I
Yeah,
was like,
no.
I'm at least gonna go see who this is, right? So I'm walking around and I'm kind of like, if Mac was with me, I never would have done this, by the way. I
Right,
got
right.
Tina backing me up, I'm fine, right?
When was this?
This was a year ago, 2 years ago, summer. It was the summer that I
Wait, you never follow a trucker.
It's no, I know. I did though. It was the summer. I didn't find him probably, thankfully, but
Yeah.
I was honestly pretty pissed and Mac wasn't with me and my mom and I were just I don't know, I was exhausted. And I was mad. I was really mad and I don't get mad easy. I was real mad.
Right.
So anyway, my I did not find him. I was kind of like creeping along in the gas station. I was going to get some snacks anyway, and I was kind of like looking around for him, but he went to the trucker side and I was obviously on the car side, but It definitely got my attention, and I do remember thinking how easily bad things can happen all over
Yeah.
the place, and you just kind of have to keep your head on a swivel.
Yes.
Y'all,
You can't give me crap for flipping that chick off anymore.
I know I didn't do anything. I don't know what I would have done if I saw him.
Yeah,
You
you
know.
followed him.
Well, I didn't follow him. We had to get gas anyway.
Well, you were trying to find him.
Oh yeah, no, that I did do. That I did. I did do that. Knowing me, I'd probably be like, "So what's up with you and your mom?
Oh my gosh.
You have some anger issues, bro.
Get
And
it together.
you that you're a little unhinged, right?"
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of little unhinged, we have new merch coming.
We do. Well, we have it.
We have it. Well, there's some in there, but we're also creating some new stuff because we have conference, like we said, next week. Then we have CrimeCon
Mm-hmm.
first week of September. So keep an eye on the website. Let us know what cases you want to hear. We just got one in that is so intense. We had a YouTube listener send a case. Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
And it's a pretty wild one. It's a lot. It actually scared me a little, but I'll work on that. We got bigger fish to
Want
fry.
to send it to me and we can do it together?
Absolutely. I will send it to you.
Okay, if it's scary.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's very scary, actually.
Well,
Very
let's do
scary.
it together.
Okay, we'll do that. It's not quite Castro scary, but it is well, you know what? It's scarier than Castro, but it's less people
Okay. Yeah,
than
Castro was
Castro.
just nuts.
Yeah. Castro, wild.
That was a crazy case.
That was a crazy case. You good job on that case. You did
Thank,
a good job on that case.
thank you. I had to redo it because I wanted to get it right.
Well, we started this one 3 times tonight.
We're just having a day.
You are having a day. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you next week. And as always,
Bye, forensic friends.
I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.